All right, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. I'm your host, Caleb. You can follow me on my socials, basically just Twitter, X, whatever you call it. If you call it X, I don't really trust you as a person, but that's besides the point. You can follow me there at CalebVUA. That's Caleb VUA. That'll also be down in the description. And if you want to contact the show, it is unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com for the email, or just hit me up in the DMs. I'm probably more responsive that way. Anywho, so today, we're doing a little bit of a pre-record thing. You'll be watching this on Tuesday, Wednesday. If you're watching it on Tuesday, I am currently at the very first day of a brand new job, and probably a lot of bit stressed out because I'm in the middle of a move and doing some stuff that I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not nervous. You're nervous. I'm not nervous. I'm nervous as hell. Yeah, either way, besides the point there. Anywho, today we have got a little bit of something special for y'all. Doing a quick little pre-record here, recording this a couple days ahead of time. Was going to record it on Wednesday and then just decided, no, I'm not doing that. And now instead, out here recording on a Friday after work, one more day of my current job before I start this brand new chapter of the old life. Yeah, and on this little pre-record episode, we have got a couple headlines to get to. Said I wouldn't have any, but a couple major things dropped. And, a couple minor things that I figured I'd talk about anyways, just because stuff happening in the sports world. So might as well react as I may to those particular things. We'll get to all that. And then we are getting to my favorite segment of this podcast. It is the recklessly early predictions for the 2024 NFL season. You all know what it is. I tell you what I think is going to happen in roughly 9 months or so. We're putting this baby in the incubator and it's coming back out in February, and we're seeing exactly how this hideously deformed creature looks. So, without further ado, I am going to continue to absolutely gulp down this fabulous red-canned carbonated caffeinated beverage, and then we're just going to get right into some headlines. We'll get to the recklessly early predictions after that. So, without further ado, said that twice now, let's get into it. Ooh, nothing like that burn at the back of the throat, man. It feels good. Wait for the burp. It's a lot louder than I thought it was going to be. I apologize for that. I don't really, but, worth saying it either way. All right, got a couple headlines to get to here before we get into the predictions. Got 1, 2, 3, 4 here for you. And this first one is a doozy, so let's just get straight into it. The NCAA is on the verge of settling a raft of antitrust lawsuits that would see the main office of the NCAA, not the conferences. Very big point there. Thought it might be the conferences flipping the bill for these lawsuits. Ultimately, looks like it's going to be the NCAA, the main office itself, which is big news for the conferences. They will be seen paying out, if this settlement goes through, $2.7 billion in lost earnings to former players. And that is not all. That's not even the biggest part of this news. It would also set up a future revenue sharing system where roughly 22% of revenues for power conferences will be shared with players. It roughly estimates out to $20 million per school, anywhere from 17 to 22. I've heard those numbers thrown out there, to distribute to athletes of all sports, mainly to football. Sorry to the other sports. We're looking at revenue sports here. Football, basketball, baseball in some schools, but mostly just the revenue sports. Mainly it's going to be going to football players. Details could change. So, nothing is set in stone, anything like that. Nothing's been formally agreed to. But we're on the verge of a massive and historic win for college athletes. And boy, oh boy, this is going to completely change how college sports is operated, how it plays. There's going to be a lot of good stuff that comes out of this. Obviously, I mean, I just did like a ballpark sort of estimate. Didn't really, extrapolate that out to, basketball or any of those sorts of things. But just looking at football, if we're assuming there's $20 million for the football team to distribute, and we, conservatively divide that out between like 150 players, that would mean each player is making a little north of $133,000 a year. I mean, that's huge money for a college kid. I mean, really, for any normal human being, that is huge money right there. We are about to see a fundamental change of how college athletics is run, how it operates, and I think we're going to see a big time mitigation of just how prevalent the transfer portal stuff is. NIL is not going away. That's obviously not a thing that's going to happen. It's just going to be a differentiator on the salary. Well, yeah, call it like it is. These would be salaries for players. It would, just put a little bit of a differentiator on the salaries. The top end of the roster is making probably closer to like maybe 400, 500, anywhere up to like $1 million plus if you're a star player, star quarterback in particular. And then it, kind of files down to what it ends up being for the rank and file, which is just the average kind of, standard stipend for what you would get out of this scheme, which, by the way, don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I remember being in undergrad back in like 2016, 2017, 2018, somewhere in that range, talking with my buddies over a couple brewskis and saying, you know what would fix this college athletics thing is obviously you got the NIL out there, but give the players a livable stipend and let the NIL be the separator. And then lo and behold, it took us until 2024, some, 7-8 years later, for that actually to come to almost fruition. Again, nothing set in stone, but again, was I ahead of my time? Some people are saying, not me, but some people are saying that. That's besides the point there. The thing we should be looking at here is that I was right. What can I say? The model that I came up with at the top of my head when I was still just a wee college student is the one that seems to ultimately be what they're going to adopt in some way, shape, or form. What can I say? Again, some people are saying I'm a genius. I'm not. I'd never say such a conceited, such a cocky thing. No, that's not in my nature. But some people are saying that. I've heard people say that on the grapevine before. So, there is that. But as far as the athletes themselves, like I said, major, historic win for college football players, for basketball players, for all revenue sports. The bad side of this comes when you start thinking about the non-revenue sports. I'm talking like, football, not football, like baseball in some places, track and field, softball, soccer. What's going to happen to those programs? Your guess is as good as mine at this point. I think a lot of the more affluent schools, particularly schools in the Big Ten and the SEC, are going to have enough money just from regular revenue distributions in all areas to be able to keep a lot of those programs afloat. I think you're going to see in a lot of these smaller universities that maybe aren't so much financially endowed as those two power conferences. It's really those guys and everybody else. But outside of those two power conferences, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of those smaller programs maybe closing down a lot of those non-revenue sports. And there is no solution in this world where everything is all hunky-dory and everyone goes along their merry way, la-di-da, life is but a dream. That's not real life. Benefits and drawbacks come with every single decision. In this case, I feel like the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. The drawbacks are there. I'm not minimizing the drawbacks. I was one of those guys. I was at a D3 school doing track and field for a year until I decided to get my ass on down to Mississippi State and enjoy the big college life and decide to forego athletics. But I was part of that for a little bit. In those sorts of cases, there's a good chance that, maybe since that track program is a little bit more successful, we would have kept it around, but less successful, maybe it's not quite that way. If you're not bringing in revenue, if you're not bringing in accolades, unfortunately, in this new model, you might end up falling by the wayside just because schools aren't keeping 100% of the revenue anymore. They're not they don't have the funds to necessarily keep some of these programs that don't bring in any money afloat. So we're in a bit of a limbo in that sort of situation. But overall, again, I think the benefits far outweigh the drawbacks in this one. Any solution where players that are making schools hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis, any system where they end up getting a cut of that money that they are bringing in to the conferences, to the schools, couldn't really call it an organization, college football, but to the sport in general, I think it's a win. It's absolutely a win. We should bask in that win. Again, nothing official, but they're not floating this out there if they think it's going to get shot down outright. I'll just put it that way. And this is kind of what the lawyer that's representing all the players in the House versus NCAA case in particular is kind of known for. He was the lawyer for Reggie White in the 1993 case that ultimately brought about changes in the NFL that instituted the rules of free agency that we see now for the most part. He's been in a ton of cases like that, landmark cases, and gotten his way. So it's going to be like this at some point. It's only a matter of time. And the stipulation with this settlement in particular is that it would be implemented no sooner than 2025. I would imagine that goes in place pretty quickly. I think there's been a lot of athletic programs maneuvering behind the scenes with some inside knowledge of knowing that there's a pretty good chance that this was going to be the way that this goes. So I think we may not see it on the surface at this very moment, but I think behind the scenes, there's been a lot of preparation to get a baseline structure in place to where whenever this gets implemented, they can kind of roll into it smoothly, having done a little bit of work ahead of time, knowing what's around the corner. And I'm interested to see how they structure this, interested to see what they do as far as if they sign players to contracts or anything like that. Essentially, they're going to be employees with this revenue share model. They already, kind of are in everything but legal name. But it's going to be interesting to see if they can somehow find a way to curb the transfer portal stuff. And I think just regular-ass revenue sharing in general will probably do a lot of that. I don't think you'll be seeing a lot of these guys like on the bottom of the roster that know, okay, I'm going to be playing in a year or two. I think you're going to be seeing less of those guys transferring just overall because I think the incentives to stay are going to be strong just by the baseline sort of compensation that they're going to be getting as opposed to going somewhere else. But I don't know. It's still not a perfect system. It'll be fine-tuned along the way. I can almost assure you of that. And the main thing is outside of impending conference realignment, because again, Clemson and Florida State are actively suing the ACC, and the outcome of that lawsuit will likely mean the violent and sudden death of the ACC almost overnight. So we're waiting on that, but I think we're coming close to a resolution on the major changes that have been happening in college football for the last 5 years or so. I think we're going to be getting soon to a point where we have stability throughout college football and throughout college sports to where we can kind of get back to a little bit of a sense of normalcy. It won't be like it was before, but we'll settle into this new normal, and it won't be the same. Won't feel the same for sure. But I think it'll be good. I don't know if it'll necessarily be better. That's yet to be seen. The 12-team playoff's still a joke, and they're trying to get the 14 before the 12-team even happens. So I don't love that, but the sport is still going to be awesome. I don't think that's ever going to change unless something major and drastic happens. So yeah, I love this. I love this solution. I'm looking forward to seeing what sort of stipulations are put in place on the final agreement. Obviously, they have to hammer some stuff out in order for this thing to get signed, sealed, and delivered. And I'm interested to see how the NCAA foots that bill, which would be paid out over 10 years, I think the article that I read by Pete Thamel said. So it would be $270 million a year every year for 10 years going out to former players for lost wages. And the NCAA doesn't have just in spite of what people may think, they're not just sitting on a giant pile of money at all times. So I'm wondering what the future of the NCAA is, wondering what the future of the conferences are, the future of the playoff. We're still in flux, but I think we're getting close to reaching a climax and then kind of settling into a long-term resolution that really I'm excited to get to. I think that the changes are fast-paced. They've been exciting at times, but ultimately I'm ready to get back to some sort of sense of normalcy, I would say. So I'll get to that text in a bit. Well, a buddy I haven't talked to in a little bit just texted me. That's good. I'll have to talk to him a little bit later on. But we've got a couple of headlines here to get to. Got two on the free agency market here in the NFL. First and foremost, this came down the pipe today. Well, probably shouldn't have said that, but on Friday, now you know when I'm recording this. On Friday, it came down the pipe that the Dolphins are signing former star wide receivers, still big name in the NFL, Odell Beckham Jr. for 1 year up to $8.25 million. $3 million of that is guaranteed. Big time 1 year prove it deal. Really solid third receiver. I think he can do some magic out of the slot. He's never really worked consistently out of the slot in his entire career. I think he was still on the outside a lot when he was with the Baltimore Ravens. I think he's going to thrive in the slot because you're kind of pigeonholed into getting one-on-ones basically every time out there. And honestly, when you got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill on the outside, he's going to be getting one-on-ones anyways. I think he's got a good opportunity to get open a lot. He's playing with a really accurate quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. I think he's still got some juice left in the tank. I don't think there's a lot of juice left in the tank, mind you. I think he's probably a couple of years out from being totally washed, but he's still got some juice left in the tank. He still played very, very well last year with the Baltimore Ravens in spurts. If he can stay on the field, I think he provides a really, really good third receiving option for the Miami Dolphins, and I think this only helps the offense. Now, is it going to help them when they get into Kansas City with minus 30-degree wind chill? Probably not. You're still going to be looking at some issues on the offensive line and wondering where we go from there ultimately. But in the regular season, and especially down at home, and Lord willing, hopefully they can get home field advantage, though we'll see on that. You'll see where I stand on that here in just a few minutes when we get to the recklessly early predictions. But overall, good signing. A signing that I think every team in the league would make for that price point. $3 million as the base is easy to hand out. Every single team would do it. I'm pretty sure that they had this agreed to before the draft, that the Dolphins were just kind of waiting to see how the draft shook out before they ultimately decided to pull the trigger on OBJ. But yeah, this seems like a no-brainer from the Dolphins, and I gotta stop saying I'm looking forward to, but I really am. I'm excited to see how the Dolphins end up incorporating OBJ into the offense. Working out of the slot is going to do wonders for him. I'll tell you that right now. No disrespect to the slot guys in the NFL, but they live a charmed life. They live a very charmed life, and I think Odell Beckham has a chance to really thrive, really hit on some underneath routes, break one every once in a while. You know Mike McDaniel's going to be tossing that pigskin down the field. Odell Beckham Jr. has been an elite deep receiver his entire career, so I don't anticipate that changing in this upcoming year. He may not have the most prominent role compared to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but he'll break free for a few. Make no mistake about it. I really like this pickup for the Miami Dolphins. Man, a quick one here. I won't touch on this one too long. Wide receiver DJ Chark, formerly of the Panthers, signed with the Chargers for 1 year up to $5 million. Let's just call it what it is. He had a terrible season in 2023. Plagued by injuries, wasn't super effective when he was out there. But hey, he'll have an opportunity to improve with one of the league's best QBs. So worth a shot. I mean, the Chargers can use all the receivers they could get. I mean, they got Ladd McConkey in the first round. He's probably going to step in and be their number one wide receiver on day one. You're hoping that Quentin Johnston steps up, but based on what happened in year one, I don't have a great deal of optimism for that. Maybe he can recapture some of the monstrous ability that we saw at TCU during that magical national championship run they had. Well, magical until they went up against the juggernaut in Georgia, but besides the point, you're hoping for a jump from him. I think DJ Chark can only help. Worst case scenario, you're not paying a whole lot of money to him, and he does bad, and it's a 1-year deal, and then he's off the books after that. So might as well take a flyer on him. He was really good before he ended up going to the Panthers last year. So, hey, again, worth a flyer, worth a shot on him. And when you're playing with Justin Herbert, he can make average receivers look really good. So it could end up working out lucratively for both sides. So we'll see how it works out here. All right, one more headline here. We're in college football. I should probably talk about the Deion and Shedeur Sanders in the room here. You may recall from earlier last week, there was an Athletic article dropped by a man whose name I totally forget, and I apologize to that man. Just kind of detailing some stories from players at Colorado that ultimately ended up moving on, entering the transfer portal. And again, probably should have had the names here. There was an Austin Peay wide receiver formerly at Colorado who had some quotes about, Deion Sanders basically telling him when he showed up, you don't have a spot on this team, you should probably enter the transfer portal, and then ultimately ignoring him in practice and not really caring about him. That stuff in particular, honestly, that part, I think the kids just got to, come to grips with what reality is in modern college football. Really just football in general. If he's so lucky enough to make it to the NFL, he's going to get treated the exact same way, except for they just straight up cut him. They don't worry about the niceties or anything like that. They just say, hey, thank you for all your hard work. We think you need to improve on this, this, and this. You are no longer a member of this team and get out of here. I mean, coaches do that in the NCAA all the time. They just can't actually cut kids. So they take away the scholarship. They say, okay, you have no spot on this team anymore, and then go from there. I don't have a problem with that. I think Deion Sanders is well within his right to do what every single other college coach has done from here back to time immemorial. So, immemorial, I don't know exactly how that phrase works. Probably shouldn't have used it, but who cares? The thing I do have a problem with is, one, Shedeur Sanders following up. You may know Shedeur Sanders as the I don't want to say franchise quarterback because he's not in the NFL, but the star quarterback at Colorado, the starting quarterback last year who had a really good start to the season, struggled as the season went on. He came back, quote tweeted the quote card with those quotes from the former wide receiver on Colorado there, and said, don't remember him. He must have been mid at best though. And I don't really like anyone on the team tweeting that sort of thing, because it just shows exactly what the kid is talking about. Like, hey, no one tried to get to know me at all. No one really gave a shit about me there. It's one thing for the coach to do that. It is another thing for the quarterback of the team, who is supposed to be a leader on the team, coming out and saying these sorts of things. It's a terrible look. There's no two ways about it. It's a god-awful look for Shedeur Sanders to be coming out saying, hey, I didn't know who one of the wide receivers on my team even was. Must have sucked, pretty much, is what he said. I'm telling you right now, NFL GMs are looking at that saying, well, character issue. We're going to have to look into that a little bit more as we get into the draft. And honestly, with the way Shedeur Sanders has comported himself, I get it. Be cocky, be brash. He's comported himself like a jackass in college so far. I mean, I get it. Showing the watch and all that sort of stuff. Cool and all when you're winning. When you start losing, it gets a little bit more complicated, you could say. And it doesn't exactly endear yourself to future employers, to fans, to any of that. And even outside of that, he just doesn't seem to, how do I put this? I feel like he approaches a lot of media. He approaches a lot of the way he comports himself with teammates. Just from afar, obviously I have no inside knowledge on that whatsoever. He comports himself with a level of arrogance that I find distasteful at times. I don't want to excoriate the kid. He's like, 21, 20 at this point. I was a shithead when I was 20, 21 as well. So, hey, we can all change. We can all get better as human beings. I don't want to excoriate the kid. I'm glad as hell that I don't have to worry about the 2025 draft class, though, as far as quarterbacks are concerned, because it seems like it's just Carson Beck and a bunch of dudes right now. And if I was sitting there with the Vikings needing a quarterback and Shedeur Sanders is on the board, boy, I'm taking what we got there, but I'm not feeling great about it. That's not the only thing that happened, though. Deion Sanders basically came out and was just openly talking shit to former players on Twitter as well. That guy, the former wide receiver on the team that quoted earlier, other players from the article. I mean, basically just showing his ass in the street pretty much. And again, it's one thing for a run-of-the-mill fan to do this. It is another thing for the head coach of a football team to be outright talking shit to former players. And man, this all I really have to say is Deion Sanders better win some games this year. He better win 8+ games. Otherwise, the situation is going to be very uncomfortable. And in one of those tweets he said, when he was going back and forth with somebody, he said, okay, I got time today. Well, maybe you should be spending more time in the office because your recruiting class is ranked in the hundreds. Of the 72 players you brought in last year, 61% of those players are no longer on the roster. They've already entered the transfer portal. So this high attrition strategy, it better pay some dividends this year, man. I'll tell you what, because the seat is about to get hot very, very quickly if he keeps comporting himself like a jackass in public. And to a certain extent, this is kind of what you get with Deion Sanders. I'm not deluding myself with that. I had a full understanding that he was going to have this cocky, brash behavior, especially in post-game press conferences. It's one thing to be brash and cocky. It's another thing to be talking just wholesale shit to 18 to 22-year-olds that were on your team. And, I mean, there's just weird stories about how he calls all the players, doesn't really know a lot of their names, just calls them son of prime, has a weird sort of religious vibe to it. I don't know, man. There's some hinky shit going on in the Colorado program right now. And it feels like a lot of stuff that may have worked at the G5 FCS level, you're not going to get away with in the Big 12, especially not this year when they are facing a gauntlet of a schedule. I mean, they're starting off the year with North Dakota State in what's supposed to be a tune-up week. I don't know if y'all ever heard of North Dakota State before, but they're an FCS powerhouse. One of the best FCS teams of all time, and they're consistently like top level at that level of football. They could very easily come in and beat Colorado week 1. Then you're going over to Nebraska, who I think is going to be a very, very good football team this year. They're going to have a top-flight defense that I think could absolutely beat the hell out of Colorado. Then you're going into the Big 12 schedule where there's no gimmies any week. They are going to face a tough schedule. One of the tougher schedules in the conference. And staring that in the face, bad recruiting classes coming in, subpar portal classes, quite frankly, coming in. They're not bringing in a whole lot of great players. It's really just the Sanderses on the team and a lot of just dudes. I guess they brought in that one 5-star offensive tackle. I think they might have brought in another 4-star offensive lineman. So there's that. So maybe those young guys come in, play well right away. I don't really know. But it just doesn't bode well for this upcoming season. And the more you put your ass out in the street, the more you're just inching your head closer and snugger onto the chopping block for whenever it is time for the administration to make a tough decision. And especially when Shedeur Sanders is gone after this year, because he will be gone after this year. That's the one. When Travis Hunter is gone after this year, the two big-time players that Deion brought with him from, oh my goodness, how do I forget their names? Jackson State. I was right down the road from Jackson State, man. 2.5 hours away from Mississippi State. I apologize for that. When you were at Jackson State, you brought those players with you. Once those players are gone, who are you replacing them with? And especially once they're gone, there's nothing really protecting Deion Sanders from getting the axe here if he doesn't produce on the field. So I hope he realizes the position he has put himself in. This is kind of the package you get with Deion Sanders. This is just, it is what it is there. But I hope he realizes the peril that his job is in if he does not produce this year, because he's setting himself up for a high degree of failure and a quick hook if he does not get things together this season. Interesting times, story we're going to follow throughout the course of next college football season. Football can't come soon enough, man. I mean, we got like 4 months until that thing opens. We're about to enter the dog days of summer. Man, it's quite a time. It's quite a time, folks. Anywho, let's move on to the main event of this podcast, folks. I'm gonna get a quick drink. I'm gonna kill the last of this Coke here, and then we're gonna get into the recklessly early predictions for 2024. Ooh, I apologize for that. Natural bodily response is swallowing all those bubbles, though. It is what it is. All right, so as promised, we have got my favorite segment of this show recurring every single year. We got recklessly early predictions for the 2024 season. If you don't remember how this goes, it's pretty straightforward. I just go through all of the accolades, all of the awards, get a prediction for those, divisions, playoff seeds, conference championship games, and ultimately Super Bowl champion. And I predict all of them here in early May. We put this in the time capsule. We revisit it basically a week after the Super Bowl, pretty much. So, with that said, that out of the way, let's get into them. Starting off with the postseason awards here. For MVP of the 2024 season, I've got C.J. Stroud. And it comes down to overall team and roster improvement. They did a lot this offseason, especially on the defensive side. They picked up Danielle Hunter. They did a whole bunch of other stuff that I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but they picked up a bunch of really good players. They attacked it in the draft. I think they're going to be very, very good on that side of the ball. And then offensively, obviously, you bring in Stephon Diggs. You still got a really solid offensive line and a quarterback in year 2 of a system. And that's my other point in this. Year 2 jump with an offensive scheme continuity. No one expected Bobby Slowick to still be in Houston after that year 1 that he had there with C.J. Stroud. And somehow, the Texans found a way to keep Bobby Slowick around, keep the offensive continuity there. I think as a result, especially with the improvement of the weapons on the outside, I think C.J. Stroud is going to have a monster year too. I think the Texans are going to be really, really good this year. And as a result, I think C.J. Stroud ends up taking home the MVP of the league. Defensive Player of the Year, I have got T.J. Watt. This feels like a makeup for, how many times he's had deserving seasons and been snubbed. I think he's won the Defensive Player of the Year at least a couple times at this point, but he's got it taken away from him from like Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa the last 2 years. I think if T.J. Watt puts together another one of those seasons, which I expect very much so this year, especially as long as he's still got Alex Highsmith rushing on the opposite side, having a worthy guy to put opposite of him, I think he puts up big-time numbers if he stays healthy. And honestly, I think the Steelers' defense is going to be much better. I think the addition of Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson that they got in the draft this year, I think it's going to pay dividends for them. And I think the defense is going to be better. T.J. Watt's still going to be putting up monster numbers. As a result, I think if he stays healthy, he gets the Defensive Player of the Year this upcoming season. That is my prediction on that one. Offensive Player of the Year, usually not a quarterback. They like to give the MVP to the quarterback and then throw a bone to the other skill position players there at the Offensive Player of the Year. How about this one? Kyron Williams, running back for the Los Angeles Rams, exploded on the scene last year. Had a monster year. He got a high ankle sprain, I want to say, kind of in the middle of that season. Still came back. Didn't really miss a beat. He was off and running. In McVay's run scheme, I think they're going to lean on him very heavily this year. That offensive line is really good for him. And if he can stay healthy, this is a big kind of health thing. I think Kyren Williams can stay healthy, and if he does, he's going to have a monster year. I think rushing anywhere from 1,600 to 1,800 yards this year, and I think he gets that Offensive Player of the Year. Gets a bunch of touchdowns, I think, in that McVay running scheme. He got a bunch of touchdowns last year. I think he continues that trend for this upcoming season, so he's my Offensive Player of the Year, Kyren Williams. Offensive Rookie of the Year, seems like a kind of chalk pick. Didn't work out well for me at all last year, but I'm taking the number 1 overall pick, man. Caleb Williams. And I thought it would be a great situation for Bryce Young last year. I was sorely mistaken. This time around, I have no qualms about it whatsoever because much to my chagrin, Ryan Poles and the Bears know what they're doing for once, and they have put Caleb Williams in, I'm going to go out on a limb and just say the best situation a number 1 overall pick has ever walked into, maybe in the history of the entire league. I mean, you got a 1-2-3 of DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, then you add Rome Odunze on the outside. Average offensive line. I'm not going to go out of my way and say it's just some standout awesome group. There's some places they could improve, but there's still a solid unit there on the offensive line. You got a running back in free agency in DeAndre Swift. You drafted Roschon Johnson last year. You got a good stable of backs back there. You got Cole Kmet at tight end. Shane Waldron, honestly, it's one of the more underrated offensive coordinator hirings of this offseason. I mean, when that staff dissolved in Seattle, Shane Waldron was kind of the gem of that one for me as far as the offensive coordinator was concerned. Did a fantastic job with Geno Smith. You may remember, I mean, that's the offensive coordinator that Geno Smith came in with and ended up having a monster season to kind of revive Geno Smith's career. I think that's a much better offensive coordinator than Luke Getsy, who they had in their last year. And I think he's going to put Caleb Williams and those receivers in great positions to go out there and make some big plays. Plus, I mean, the kid is just an insane talent. I mean, a really, really just wildly talented quarterback. We've known he's going to be the number 1 overall pick for really the last 2 to 3 seasons, ever since he burst on the scene as a true freshman at Oklahoma. Great mobility, insane arm strength. If he can just kind of keep it in the system a little bit more, have less of those wild plays, he's not going to get away with everything he got away with in college at USC and Oklahoma. That's just a fact. Facing, just a different world of defense in the NFL. But if he can stick in the pocket a little bit more, trust what he's seeing downfield, make smart decisions, that arm talent's going to get him a long way. And the offense and the skill positions around him are going to get him a long way. I think Caleb Williams is going to have a monster season. I think in year 1, he's going to be the Bears' first 4,000-yard passer in franchise history. And I think because of that, he gets Offensive Rookie of the Year. Defensive Rookie of the Year, this one's always kind of a crapshoot. Last year, it was kind of the chalk favorite in Will Anderson, but it was only by 1 vote, 16-15 to the second-ranked player in that. Who I think was Devin Witherspoon who was second in the voting. I can't quite remember, but again, this is one of the more toss-up awards of the annual awards here. So to me, I'm still taking the first defensive player off the board. I think it's Laiatu Latu over there with the Indianapolis Colts, a big-time edge prospect coming in. This is a pass rushers award at the end of the day. Will Anderson won it last year. You can go back through the history of this award. Micah Parsons won it, all sorts. I mean, really, you have to go back to, I think it was Tariq Woolen was the defensive rookie of the year, or whenever he was a rookie, which, by the way, called that is what it is. Am I a genius? Some are saying, not me, whatever. But yeah, I think Laiatu Latu is ready to be an impact rusher from day one. He's got every move in the book. It's really more than anything, it comes down to health, because he had the best repertoire of pass rush moves in the entire draft. He's not quite the physical freak that Dallas Turner was, but he's got way more moves. He's way more savvy. He is wise beyond his years in the pass rush game, and he's got the deepest bag of moves in the entire draft. I think, again, ready from day one to step in, and if he stays healthy, there was those health concerns that pushed him down the board a little bit. If he stays healthy, I think he's an automatic 10-sack guy at least. I think he's an impact rusher from day one, and I think as a result of that, I think he gets the Defensive Rookie of the Year here. Coach of the Year. I have got, and this is another kind of toss-up award because it's such a narrative-based one more than anything else, and it kind of comes down to, like we look at last year, Kevin Stefanski. If it's not for cycling through 4 quarterbacks and still making it to the playoffs, he wouldn't have been the Coach of the Year last year, and who could have ever predicted that coming into the season last year? So, again, kind of a crapshoot. That's really what this whole exercise is about, though. This year I got Raheem Morris, though. The toughest award for me to pick for the reasons that I just laid out there. However, I think the addition of Kirk Cousins gets them into the playoffs after a 7-10 season last year. Really, if they had a semblance of good quarterback play last season, they would have been in the playoffs. They would have won that NFC South division. And then I think the addition of Raheem Morris himself materially improves that defense. I don't think it's a fantastic defensive roster. I think you got a really good cornerback in A.J. Terrell. I think you got an all-pro caliber safety in Jesse Bates on the back end. And Grady Jarrett still got a few years left in the tank, and he's a dominant defensive tackle. Could have stood to draft a rusher at number 8 instead of Michael Penix, but Hayes in the barn now, nothing you can really do about that. Even with that said, though, I think the defense is going to be better. I think Kirk Cousins is going to drastically improve the offense. I think they're going to use Bijan Robinson properly this year, which is going to be a nice, refreshing change of pace. And I think there's a good chance they end up getting like 11 wins. I think 10 wins is kind of the expectation this year at the very least. Get you into the playoffs with that at the very least. And as a result, going from a 7-10 team to improving to the playoffs in the next year, I think Raheem Morris has got the inside track to get the nod on that one in this upcoming year, and that'd be great for him. Raheem Morris has had an odyssey in the coaching ranks, reaching the highest of highs entirely too early down there with Tampa Bay, going into just a dog shit situation there as well. Got the job at like 31-32, went miserably terrible down there at Tampa Bay. And then kind of scares some teams off because of how bad it went there in that first stint for, a long time. And it took him a long time of just, paying his dues, being a defensive coordinator to finally get this opportunity. If he gets Coach of the Year, that'd be a fantastic story, man. I'm rooting for him, quite honestly. I think he's a great dude that deserves every single bit of the accolades there. So he's my pick for Coach of the Year. And the one rounding out the awards, I got Comeback Player of the Year. And again, this is kind of a beauty in the eye of the beholder thing. Do I think it's a bad player who makes himself good this year? Is it a guy that got injured last season that comes back and has a good season? I went with the latter. So with that in mind, I'm taking Anthony Richardson, quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. Explosive rookie year before his injury. I think he was the first player in NFL history to start his career with, I think it was 2 or 3 straight, 1 touchdown through the air, 1 touchdown on the ground games. A physical freak, got to learn to protect himself a little bit better, as shown by being out with that shoulder injury after, I want to say, like week 5 or something like that. But if he protects himself, I think he's in an ideal situation with the offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, to come out there, kind of mold around his strengths, lean into the rushing ability, have a couple of those crazy deep shots that he was so well known for coming out in the draft. Just got to dial it in a little bit. He's a physical freak. If he can stay healthy, I think he has a monster year. And I ultimately think he wins Comeback Player of the Year before that. Improved weapons also. Offensive line around him. They got A.D. Mitchell in the second round. Kind of a steal there for him as well. Sneaky good top of the draft there for the Colts, if I had to say so. But yeah, good O-line around him. Improved weapons. I think Anthony Richardson goes out there and has a really good year. I think they finish kind of neck and neck with well, maybe not neck and neck. I think the Texans are going to be just kind of a cut above, but really competing in that AFC South division. So I gave Anthony Richardson the nod there. All right, let's move on to the divisions. We're just, starting with AFC, going to the NFC. In the AFC North, I have got the Cleveland Browns. And again, tough division to pick year after year. It's a crapshoot all around. But the fact of the matter is, the Cleveland Browns have the best roster in a loaded division. Stars from top to bottom. I'm talking offensive line, receiver, running backs. I mean, even if Nick Chubb isn't the player he was before the injury, I trust that running game behind that offensive line. Defensively, I mean, they were one of, if not the best defense in the entire league last year in the regular season. I mean, you got Myles Garrett, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Denzel Ward on the outside there. Again, just star-studded from top to bottom in a way that no one else in this division is. Again, like I said, defense is star-studded at every level. If Deshaun Watson is just average next year, he doesn't even have to be great. He doesn't even have to be pre-nasty man Deshaun Watson, or pre-knowing that he was a nasty man Deshaun Watson is probably a more apt way to put it. He just has to be 16 out of 32. You just got to be average in there instead of being bottom 10, bottom 5 in the league. Just toe the Mendoza line, Deshaun Watson. If you do that, the Cleveland Browns should win this division in my mind. They are absolutely ready, poised for a deep playoff run if they can kind of, get the job done and pull everything together at the quarterback position this year. The AFC South, I have got the Houston Texans. Best roster in that division with an ascendant young QB. Kind of a no-brainer for me. Watch out for the Colts in this one. I think there's a really good chance that the Colts end up, if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, they might end up contending. They might end up vying for this division title as well. So watch out for that. But I think the Houston Texans end up winning this division, and maybe not comfortably, but I think they end up winning this division pretty handily, which would be the same thing as comfortably. Either way. AFC East, I have actually got the New York Jets this time. As much as I hate Aaron Rodgers, and boy, I hate Aaron Rodgers, folks. He is a smarmy, annoying son of a bitch. But if this team had even a semblance of good QB play last year, much like the Cleveland Browns, because the Cleveland Browns actually made the playoffs last year, really much like the Falcons more than anything else. If they had even a semblance of good QB play, they would have been a playoff team last season, no question in my mind. So I think Aaron Rodgers, who knows what he has left in the tank, I think he's good enough to be a top half of the league quarterback. And again, that's pretty much all you need with all the weapons at his disposal. Well, the weapons are okay, I suppose. Running back is great. Defense is great. So if you just play a little bit above average, I think that's good enough to get you a win in this division. The defense is still nasty, like I said. Miami and Buffalo's rosters have taken a step back due to salary cap demands. So I think that kind of clears the way for the New York Jets to make a run at this division. I didn't even mention the Patriots because, come on, man. The Patriots aren't making the playoffs this year. They could be sneaky good. Like, I could see them being like a 7-10, 8-9. Very easily I could see that from the Patriots because their defense is so damn good. But the offense is a work in progress, man. We can't ask them to just go from third worst record in the entire league last season to competing for the division title within the course of an offseason. I just can't see it. So Jets get the nod there for me. Then rounding out the AFC, I have got the Kansas City Chiefs to win the AFC West because, come on, man, we all know. The receiving core is much improved from last year, obviously. You bring in Hollywood Brown. You trade up into the first round to get Xavier Weaver. No, not Xavier Weaver. Xavier Worthy. Who the hell is Xavier Weaver? I've heard that name before. It's definitely a former athlete. I just can't put my finger on where he's from. But they drafted Xavier Worthy in the first round. He's going to be getting open deep. Hollywood is also a speedster as well. They're trying to throw the damn ball down the field, obviously. Clear out some underneath stuff for Travis Kelce to do the Lord's work. Even with losing L'Jarius Sneed, the defense should still be solid. Steve Spagnuolo is a great defensive coordinator, and he has maybe the best defensive lineman in all of football in Chris Jones there on that front of the defense. Also, this really just kind of comes down to question, do they still have Mahomes? Yeah, then they are my pick. It's as simple as that right now. And until the Chargers start coming up and doing right by Justin Herbert, by putting more stuff around him, it's going to be the Chiefs year after year after year. They are the juggernaut. They are the modern dynasty. And until they stop being that, they will be my pick to win the AFC West. So, with that said, let's move on to the NFC. In the NFC North, man, you want to talk about a division that's got a possibility of being the best division in football. I've got a little bit of bias here, obviously, because my team is in here, but the NFC North, you go from top to bottom, there's not a bad roster in the entire bunch. I could easily see this being what the AFC North was last year and every single team finishing above 500. That's just how stacked and loaded this division is right now. I mean, you just go down the list. I mean, Green Bay Packers, Detroit Lions, Minnesota Vikings, Chicago Bears. Again, show me the one that's going to go 6-11, 7-10. If you had to pick one, maybe you'd pick the Minnesota Vikings, but I think that's underestimating how much they did for the defense in the course of this offseason. I think J.J. McCarthy's going to be good under center ultimately, and I think Sam Darnold's going to be just good enough to where he won't shoot the team in the foot on a consistent basis anyway. So we'll leave it at that at the very least. But this is a tough division to pick. Ultimately, though, I honestly told myself I had to pick a team to go from worst to first because it's happened 19 of the last 20 seasons in the NFL. So it's probably going. That's, you know, if you take those last two seasons as a sample size, 95% chance it happens this year. And I'm not going to pick another one to go worst to first. So to me, I'm picking the Chicago Bears, man. The offense is not even sneaky loaded. It's just loaded with weapons right now. I already went through the array of weapons at Caleb Williams' disposal. We're talking about his Rookie of the Year candidacy. But a supremely talented rookie QB with all of those weapons around him. The defense has only improved, and they were balling down the stretch last year. They were playing out of their minds, and Matt Eberflus is still calling the plays for this upcoming season. So, fuck the Bears at the end of the day, but if one team is going to go from worst to first, I think it's this one. I really do. I think the Chicago Bears are on the verge of having a breakthrough, and they're about to just throw open a nice 3-4 year window to load up and try and win a Super Bowl with Caleb Williams as their starting quarterback before they have to pay him, probably $60+ million whenever he comes up for an extension. So until then, they've got a window to build around a young rookie QB, assuming he is everything we expect him to be. I do think the Chicago Bears end up taking this division by virtue of that. And I think it's going to be neck and neck till the very end. I don't think any team's going to pull away in this division. I just think the competition is going to be way too cutthroat in this. I think the Chicago Bears end up pulling this out, though. And it pains my heart to say it. But I hate the Bears, but I got to give respect where it's due. They've really, Ryan Poles has done a fantastic job putting that team together. In the NFC South, I have got the Atlanta Falcons, much as I alluded to there with Raheem Morris's Coach of the Year candidacy. And much like the Jets, if they had a semblance of good QB play, they would have won this division last season. They had the best roster in the division last year. They continue to have probably the best roster in the division this time around for whatever it's saying about that bad division. Kirk is a massive upgrade at quarterback. I think the defense will be better than it was last season. I don't want to belabor the point because I already, hashed all this out with Raheem Morris earlier. But yes, I think the Falcons do end up winning this division. Maybe they get 10, 11 wins, something along those lines. I think they get this division and win and go to the playoffs. NFC East, this division is allergic to back-to-back division champions, and I think the Cowboys took a noticeable step back in the roster department this offseason. So I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles to win the NFC East once again. Vic Fangio is going to have a huge impact on that defense. The defense was a mess all year last year. They had massive struggles down the stretch that were never fixed in spite of who they put as the defensive play caller. Somehow Matt Patricia wormed his way back in there, and that may be the very last stop that Matt Patricia has as a defensive play caller, is what it is. Vic Fangio is going to be better than all of them, and I think they got some really good players. Hit cornerbacks hard in the top of the draft between Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean right out of the gate. I think it's going to help them big time. The defensive line is never, Howie Roseman's never going to let it not be stacked on the defensive line there with the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Carter's coming into his second year, and I think he's poised to have a monster year. Jordan Davis, his former running mate's going to be sitting right there next to him. Good rushers on the outside. They signed Bryce Huff in free agency. Still got some questions at linebacker, but ultimately I think it's going to be improved secondary, improved defensive scheme. And I'm a little skeptical of Kellen Moore, but he's an upgrade from Brian Johnson, I would say, as well. And he's got a lot of talent to work with between Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert at tight end. You sign Saquon Barkley. I think he's going to take this offense to the next level, quite frankly. And I think that the Eagles are just going to end up pulling away in this division. I think it's probably going to be a two-team race once again. Probably going to be between Dallas and Philadelphia. I just think Philadelphia has the edge there. I think they just have, again, best roster in their entire division, quite frankly. All right, so rounding out my divisions here, I've got the NFC West, and no surprise here, I'm taking the San Francisco 49ers once again. They still have, pound for pound, you go from top to bottom of the roster, the best roster in the NFL to me. No question in my mind. They're still feeding off that juice for probably one more season before they have to pay Brock Purdy, that big-time contract extension that they're going to have to fork over. It's an inevitability on that front. But they're still feeding off of that, redirecting the salary cap into a lot of different places to keep their roster top-notch, and they did exactly that. John Lynch has done a fantastic job putting that team together. Same thing with Kyle Shanahan, for that matter. Got some really good draft picks. I like Ricky Pearsall a lot. I think he fits into this offense very well. Tough guy, makes crazy contested catches, really agile after the catch as well. Really love his fit into this offense. I think competition will be tougher this year from top to bottom. I think the Rams they're going to have a tough go of it with not having Aaron Donald on defense anymore, but they got some really good young defenders on that side of the ball now. Offensively, Sean McVay and Matt Stafford are still there, and Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are in fact still there as well, so that'll really help out a lot. The Cardinals, I think they're going to be one of the more, honestly, it came down to me for the Coach of the Year conversation. It came down between Raheem Morris and Jonathan Gannon for my pick for Coach of the Year. I just thought it might be a year too early for the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are going to go 7-10, 8-9 this year in all likelihood. I think they're going to be a really solid football team when it's all said and done. And the Seattle Seahawks, I think they made a really, really good coaching hire there in Mike Macdonald. I think Ryan Grubb was I think a lot of people that just pay attention to the NFL don't know how good Ryan Grubb is. People that were looking at the film, especially people that watched Washington play football last year, had no doubt in their mind that Ryan Grubb was a pro offensive coordinator, an NFL-level offensive coordinator, and that was an absolute just bombshell of a hire for Mike Macdonald at the offensive coordinator position. They got some stuff to figure out on the defensive side of the ball. They're still kind of rebuilding that a little bit, but they got a good secondary to start with, and stuff to figure out in the front seven, but a good secondary to start with, and Mike Macdonald's going to scheme some stuff up to help out a lot. I really think every team in this division, outside of maybe the Rams, got better this offseason. So it's not like the Niners are going to have no competition whatsoever. I just think the Niners are just a better team than anyone else in the West right now. I think they have the best coach at the moment. So, yeah, just give me the 49ers. I think they keep this streak going of winning the division and getting into the playoffs as a result. So, with that said, let's run through the playoff seeds here. In the AFC, I've got the Chiefs at the 1. I think the offensive improvements on the outside really kind of put the Chiefs back to where they should be year in, year out. I don't think you're going to be seeing those offensive struggles that you saw last year with this new look receiver group. Yet to be seen on Rashee Rice, what ends up happening with him. Whisperings are coming out that it's going to be at least half the season that he's down for. He'll be lucky if he doesn't get like hard jail time for the stuff that he did a couple months back. Even with that said, though, I think the Chiefs are in a good position to be the number 1 seed because they got that dude. They've got the GOAT at quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. Number 2, I've got the Texans. I think they're in for a big-time season this year. I really like what the Texans are putting together. Number 3, I have got the Cleveland Browns. Again, I think they're poised to put themselves in position for a good playoff run here. Number 4, I've got the Jets. I think they're going to win the division. I don't think they're going to be, knocking anyone's socks off necessarily with how they play throughout the season. And for the wild card spots at the 5 seed, I got the Ravens. I think they're going to be just a shade behind the Browns, and that division's so good that they're probably going to have the best record among wild card spots. Still got the Bills. I can't count them out. I know they lost a lot of players in that roster, but they still got Josh Allen. They still got a really solid defense and a really good defensive coach in Sean McDermott. So I still think they sneak into the playoffs. And how about this for a 7 seed? I've got the Indianapolis Colts making it to the playoffs, sneaking in there in that 7 seed. I think it's like a 10-7 spot. Maybe they go 9-8, something along those lines. I think if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, I think the defense is sneaky good this year. I think Leatu Latu is going to be, like I said, an impact player from day one that really puts them over the top. And if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, I think that offense ends up playing very well and wins them some games that maybe people don't expect them to win. So I've got them slated in there at the 7 seed right now. In the NFC, I think the Eagles improved enough to where I think they're going to be the 1 seed, quite frankly. I think they're in for a really, really good season. I think Jalen Hurts is a bounce-back season. I think that defense is much improved from what it was under that old regime. And I think as a result, they get back to the top of the NFC like they were 2 years ago. At the number 2 seed, I got the 49ers, and I don't think they finish behind them by very much. I think the Eagles and Niners ultimately might be on a collision course once again, but we'll wait to see what my predictions are there, all right? At number 3, I've got the Bears. Again, I think they could very easily be an 11-win team this year. I really do believe that. I think they're a really good roster. That was truly just like consistent quarterback play and a couple pieces away. They got the pieces, they got the quarterback, and I think the Bears might be off and running this year. Number 4, I've got the Falcons. The defense is just going to lose them some games that maybe they probably should have won, but ultimately I still think they win the division, so they're at the 4 seed for me, and I don't think anyone else in that division ends up making the playoffs. And You're going to start to see my biases come through here. So let's get into the 5 seed. I got the Lions. I don't think they're going to finish very far behind the Bears. Then I got the Packers at 6. Jordan Love, that young roster, great receiving core, all of them on their rookie deals, and a defense that I think is going to be, it can't be a whole lot worse than when Joe Barry was there. So I think they're due to improve on that front as well. And when you got Jordan Love, I think there's a good opportunity for some growth there coming up this season. And at the 7 seed, I have got the Minnesota Vikings. They went 7-10 last year, and they legitimately didn't have a quarterback for the last 2/3 of the season, pretty much. Went on like a 4-game winning streak without having a quarterback there, pretty much, then fell apart down the stretch. But Kevin O'Connell's a fantastic offensive coach. They made a bunch of additions on the defensive side of the ball that I think are going to, I'm going to say it. I think the Vikings are going to have a top 10 defense this year. I think they're going to be very good. I think Brian Flores did some, unheard of, innovative stuff with his scheme last year. I think that continues this year with better players to work with overall and all around. Yes, you lost Daniil Hunter, but you bring in Jonathan Grenard. You trade up to draft Dallas Turner. You bring in Andrew Van Ginkel on the outside. The pass rush is much better on the outside. The defensive tackles, it scares me, but it is what it is at this point. Solid linebackers behind him. Still got Harrison Smith. You still got Josh Metellus. You still got Bynum back there. I think Kyrie Jackson, guy that the Vikings got in the 4th round, could make some really big contributions here in year 1. And then, of course, you still got Byron Murphy on the outside. I just feel like maybe it's a little bit biased, but I think if Sam Darnold can keep the ship afloat until J.J. McCarthy is ready, I think the Vikings could still have a 10-win season, 10-11-win season, get into the playoffs, and then make some noise from there. Yes, I am biased. I totally recognize that. But the NFC North, I really can't understate this. It is a disgusting division this year in the most complimentary way possible. Not a bad team in that division. And if you take one of those teams and plop it in just about any other division, they're a playoff team. That's an absolute fact. I think this is a division where I feel like you could get every single team above 500, and I honestly expect for that to happen. I think it's the best division in football coming up this year, bar none. So, to the playoff results. Starting off with the AFC Championship, I've got the Chiefs, no surprise there, and I've got the Texans. So 1 versus 2, CJ Stroud versus Patrick Mahomes. That would be, just a boon to ratings like we've not seen before. Well, we've seen plenty of boons to ratings in the NFL, but you understand. It'd be a fantastic matchup of the incumbent GOAT with the up-and-coming guy that, if my predictions go right, will be coming off an MVP season. Blockbuster matchup there. And the NFC Championship, I've got the 49ers, but I've also got the Lions. I just have a feeling that the Eagles are going to trip up somewhere along the way, and I just think the Lions, they only got better this offseason, man. They were very, very good last season. I think they ended up finished the season 11-6 or something like that. Jared Goff's still a really solid quarterback. They've got a great offensive line, really good weapons on the outside. And all they did was just pound the defensive secondary. I mean, they first two picks, Terrion Arnold and Enos Rakestraw, two corners right out of the bat. Addressed the biggest area of need on the team right out of the gate, and they just went grown man football. Big boys and defenders all throughout the rest of the draft. I feel like that pays dividends for them this season. They've still, for somehow the third or fourth straight year, they've got Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator. I can't imagine that's going to be that way much longer, but I couldn't imagine it was going to be that way much longer like 2 seasons ago. So I just feel like the Lions are ready to burst through and make that jump to the next level. So with that said, my Super Bowl matchup, I've got the Kansas City Chiefs because, again, until they show me otherwise, I'm just going to assume the Chiefs are going to be there year after year. And on the other side, I think the Lions break through and they finally get back to the Super Bowl, or get to a Super Bowl in general, really. I don't even know if they've been to a Super Bowl, quite frankly. I think this is just a year for a deep playoff run for the Lions. I just feel like they are such a good football team. They knocked on the door last year, got so tantalizingly close, and then just couldn't close the deal. This year, I don't think that is the case. I think they get to the Super Bowl. But ultimately, my champion, I think the Chiefs go for the three-peat. I just feel like the defense, again, losing L'Jarius Sneed is probably going to hurt to a certain extent, but they have good other defenders in that secondary. They still have Chris Jones out there. I think that defense, maybe they take a little bit of a step back. They won't be quite like a top 5 unit like they were really last year. But I don't think they're going to be finishing much far out of the top 10. I think the offense is going to be much, much better this year. I think they're going to have a real vertical component. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be back to doing Patrick Mahomes things in the regular season. It's probably going to be between him and Stroud for MVP next year, quite frankly. And I just think that lifts them over the Lions in this game. I think the Kansas City Chiefs go for a three-peat. I think, in all likelihood, Travis Kelce rides off into the sunset with his beautiful long-term girlfriend, if him and Taylor Swift are still dating. And, yeah, that's just how I feel. I just feel like this is the modern dynasty, and I think it only continues this year. More of the same, but I think it should be a highly entertaining NFL season. And with that, there you have it. Those are my recklessly early predictions. We'll throw this thing in the time capsule, revisit this thing in 9 months or so. Who's to say where we'll all be in 9 months? We may all be dead, for all I know. You don't know. Could happen. Anyway, thank you all so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. That was the Recklessly Early Predictions. If you enjoyed, go ahead, subscribe wherever you're listening to this, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Hit the subscribe, share with a friend to help me grow this thing a little bit more. If you want to follow me on the socials, it's CalebVUA on Twitter. That's the @ by the way. It's also down in the description if you want to hit the link and just go that way. Also, if you want to hit up the show via email, it's unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. I'll probably be a little bit more responsive through the DMs on Twitter, but link is down in the description for the email if you want to go that route as well. So, yeah, thank you all so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. As always, I got just about no clue what I'm talking about, and I am in actual hell right now in my first day at a new job. But with that said, one thing I learned this past week, the moon is slowly getting further away from the Earth. In a couple of years, it simply won't be there anymore. It'll be off into the ether of space. So, fun fact for you. Anywho, I don't know what happens with the tides when that happens, but is what it is. Either way, I will see y'all next week, I suppose. Don't know what the hell I'm going to be doing. We're getting right into the doldrums of the football off season, but I'll figure it out. Either way, I will talk to y'all then. Y'all have a good one. Deuces.